What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today I wanted to showcase some of the newly buffed Swalot in the Open Great League. This Pokemon is a very interesting core breaker as well as a very bulky poison type in this current meta, and it takes full advantage of the newly buffed Sludge. It's a lot more consistent than it used to be, and because of its ground type damage, it's great into the opposing poisons. So let's get into the battles and see what Swalot can do. Alright, let's get right on into it. First game of the day, Swalot in the lead up against a grass-type Pokemon, Serperior. One of the best spots we could see it here, but obviously, honestly, our whole team has played into Serperior, even Lapras with Ice Beam later on. We're going to go for a Sludge to deny them one Poison Sting of damage and energy against us, and because this is resisted, it's not going to do a lot of damage, but it will start chipping them down over time. Mudshot is super effective against this Drapion, which is also doing quite a bit of damage to them. In comes a Crunch, very likely here from this Drapion. We're able to survive it, but because they got the defense drop, I will swap out, making sure that we don't get knocked out by the next charge move. Our Lapras at this point can tank 2 crunches unless another crunch debuff does end up coming through. Of course, our opponent does get that crunch debuff because that move is basically just 100% debuff chance when you don't want it to go for the debuff against your Pokemon. And comes a Sparkling Aria up against the Shadow Drapion. It does knock them out, and Serperior is likely going to come back in. At this point, I will be able to land a charge move against them if they do try to go for a full farm down, and because they got that defense drop, they will get the full farm down, but not before an Ice Beam will be able to do either a critical amount of damage or draw a shield. They do up to let it go sideways, not quite enough damage to knock them out because that defense drop did end up happening. We get sidewaved or find them down before we can sidewave them down. In comes a charge move from this Serperior. This will do a massive amount of damage to us, but because I'm able to tank this move up, I can go for a 1 shield farm down against them. I feel like while Sableye is a good Pokemon, there's a lot of Pokemon in the backline that could just kind of 2-shield through you, so I don't want to completely invest in it, and yeah, that's a good thing that I didn't just go for a 2-shield Sableye. We would get fully incinerated down in the back with the Shadow Typhlosion, but now that I still have energy, I can draw shields with our Swalot, and then get a lot of faster pressure, potentially draw shields as well with our Shadow Sableye. In comes a charge move from this Typhlosion. This will do a lot of damage to us. I have to shield this up. Blast Burn does probably get shielded here, and because they went for a full-on Blast Burn, I can go for back-to-back Foul Plays here in just a second. First one does come through 2 more Shadow Claws, and then a Foul Play will either knock them out or force all of their energy if they did throw energy before this, and because our Swalot was just 2 Mudshots away from a Sludge, they did have to overfarm. Down goes the Typhlosion, and 1 Shadow Claw is all it takes to knock out that Serperior. Next matchup, did I see that right up against world champion Yakai, one of the best battlers in the world, with one of the worst possible leads we could see here. Fortress is not only bad for our Swalot, but also for our Lapras, which means at this point, our Shadow Sableye is going to have to carry this whole team if we want any chance to win this game. Foul Play does draw a shield. Obviously, that means a Rock Tomb is going to come through shortly after. He doesn't want to take as much damage as he can on his Fortress, and likely we're going to see a swap out here in just a second. He does swap out, but the switch clocks are very desynced at this point, so I think the way we can have any sort of chance this game is by dancing around the switch clock, going for catches, maybe trying to save energy on our Sableye, and just in general making his life as annoying as possible. It seems like Shadow Sableye has a lot of play here. We're going to shield up this Hydro Cannon, and we can go for a swap out here in just a second, maybe even get a catch on our Lapras. We go for a catch, and of course, this is going to be a Hydro Cannon at this point. We're able to absorb a lot of damage that this Pokemon would not want to throw against us. Obviously, a Skull Bash would have been so much more efficient, and now if he wants to get any damage off, I could go for either the Sparkling Aria to knock him out, or this is just going to be a Hydro Cannon before he's even able to reach a Skull Bash. In comes a Hydro. It does a decent chunk of damage, but in comes that Fortress once again. We know, though, at this point, Fortress has dumped all of its energy into our Sableye, and the Shadow Claw chip damage has put them into range where I think 2 Sparkling Arias should be enough to knock them out. If he shields this, I can swap out once again into our Shadow Sableye, and Sableye is going to be able to once again start ramping up in this game. I go for the combo play here. We're able to go for the Foul Play against this Fortress, which should knock them out at this point, and that Blastoise doesn't have a charge move. There are 2 rollouts away, so I can once again overfarm with our Shadow Sableye and hopefully sweep this endgame matchup. Back comes in that Blastoise. 3 Shadow Claws into the CMP on the Hydro Cannon means that now we have as much energy as we can into whatever that final Pokemon is going to be. Sableye is going to try its best here. It is a Shadow Dusclops, a Pokemon Sableye would love to see. GG's to our opponent there. Next matchup, we're going to see a bit of an awkward lead, actually. Toxapex is not what you want to see. Despite being a pretty good Poison-type answer, generally, Swalot doesn't have any charging pressure here, right? These Mudshots are super effective, but because Toxapex is so bulky, it doesn't really look like it's doing that much more damage than these Poison Jabs, which are supposedly resisted, are doing against me. Sludge, as you can see, they're also not doing a lot of damage, and our opponent makes a very interesting play where rather than just staying in that lead matchup, they try to either catch a move or they just want to bank 100 energy on Toxapex and use a ground type as a safe swap. While we don't have a grass type Pokemon to respond with this Quagsire, we have our Lapras, but they go for a nasty Aqua Tail bait against our water type Pokemon. Because we did end up shielding that move, we do get a shield from them. They might have thought a Skull Bash was going to come through, but they can still go for a Stone Edge here in just a second, which is going to do a critical amount of damage to our Ice type Pokemon. In comes that Stone Edge. It doesn't quite one-shot us here. Lapras is pretty bulky. Non-stab, non-shadow Stone Edge, not able to one-shot us, but it still puts us pretty low. Sparkling Aria will get some chip damage here. I'm going to swap out, go for a combo play using all the energy I have on Swalot to hopefully knock out this Quagsire. They could shield us if they want to, but they end up letting down their Quagsire, which means at this point, our Swalot has a lot of energy, but it will go into a Diggersby. So not exactly what we wanted to see in the backline. A little bit of a core breaker, actually, to our Swalot plus our Shadow Sableye. In comes the Ice Beam. It does almost half of their HP, but because they're going to be able to outpace us before our next Ice Beam, we might get debuffed here. We might also get one-shot. How much damage does a Scorching Sands do? Honestly, not as much as you might expect. Swalot is so bulky, it's able to survive that and get to this Ice Beam. We did get debuffed here, but our opponent, if they end up letting it go, we should be in a decent spot. Of course, they shield, which is not what we want to see. Our opponent swaps out now into the Toxapex, which has 100 energy. They're forced to throw a charge move, and our Shadow Sableye is going to have a lot of work to do in the backline. Brine does end up landing against us, does not knock us out, but we can reach a Sparkling Aria. It's not going to do too much damage, but this will guarantee at this point that they are in range where a Foul Play plus the Shadow Claw damage can knock them out before 2 Brines will be reached by this Toxapex. In comes a Brine. I know they have heavier hitting charge moves on that Diggersby, so I will no-shield this Brine, try to overfarm as much as I can here, and knock out this Toxapex. If I had Dazzling Gleam, I might be able to win this game, because I know Dazzling Gleam does do just a bit more raw damage, but I'm using Power Gem as a way to hit a couple Pokemon a little bit more effectively, as you'll see later in this video. But because we don't have Dazzling Gleam right now, I needed a catch to win this game. I didn't quite get the catch, which means they have so much energy. I go for the Foul Play. It's not going to knock out. I think Gleam does like 7% more than a Foul Play, so if they have like 7% of their HP, which honestly that would be very close, then we might have been able to win this one, but our opponent at this point has way too much energy. Sableye will take a Scorching Sands and get knocked out, unfortunately not winning that matchup. All right, next game here, we're going to see a Swalot in the lead up against an opposing Swalot, a very neutral lead matchup. Obviously, we are both Poison-type Pokemon. We're both going to be doing Mudshot, super effective Fast Pressure against each other, and we are both going to be going for Ice Beams. At this point, I'm going to make a nasty play. They're overthrowing so much energy at this point that I figured they'd throw right before they got to 100 with a full-on Ice Beam. No reason for them to ever debate in that matchup, and we bait out a Dragon-type with our Ice-type Pokemon. With that said, we are a Psychic-type Fast Pressure Pokemon, which means this Dark-typing on Guzzlord will resist all of our Fast Pressure. In comes a charge with just a Brutal Swing, though. We can survive that, go for an Ice Beam in just a second, and still be in a very good spot. Ice Beam is super effective, but I don't think it's quite enough to one-shot, especially because our Fast Pressure is not adding up too much. In comes the next charge move, though. They don't go for a charge attack against us. In fact, they want to let us knock them out to maybe get a farm down against our Lapras. Sparkling Aria does knock them out here. In comes a Golisopod, I believe, and I didn't want to give them a farm down. At this point, we know their full team, and we know that both our Swalot and potentially our Shadow Sableye has a lot of play into them. I go for the next Sludge here. Unfortunately, our opponent makes a nice catch back in return. It's not quite an Ice Beam catch on a Water Ice type, but a Sludge catch on a Swalot is still a pretty nice play by them. With that said, we are still in a very good position because they have used so much energy, and we are already at an Ice Beam ourselves. They can Ice Beam us, but at this point, if they no-shield any moves, our Shadow Sableye can just Shadow Claw everything down, and if they shield us up, then we have so many charge moves that we can throw with our Swalot, with our Sableye, we should be able to win this game. Ice Beam does end up landing, and at this point, I think I might even get a Sludge off before they can go for a full-on Ice Beam, which should knock them out, which also means if they let this go, Shadow Sableye just can tap down the rest of this team. In comes that Golisopod once again, Shadow Claw from Shadow Sableye, doing way more damage than this Golisopod's able to output. They would need 3 charge moves here to knock us out, but even then, I don't think we get completely one-shot by any charge attack from this Golisopod. They realize it's a little too late, and we're able to win that game. Next matchup, a Pangoro in the lead, a Pokemon my backline wants to avoid at all costs. Our opponent is staying in the lead matchup for just a second here. They try to go for a catch on a Swalot, a Pokemon. Obviously, Lapras does have a lot of play into, but up energy, Swalot can put in some work here because Sludge, as we know, is a very efficient charge move. And comes the first one. It's not going to 2-shot us, but a 3-shot is possible, and because only our Psywaves are super effective here, we can't really one-shot them with a charge attack. With that said, I don't really know what I want to do this game. I could go for Switch Advantage. I could try to go for a Farm Down as well with our Swalot. I'm a little bit worried about whatever their final Pokemon might be. I think I might have played this trainer actually a little bit earlier in the week. I think there's a Talonflame in the backline, which if I give a Talonflame any sort of an energy lead against us, it could be a little bit awkward. So I'm going to opt for an undercharge here and just get energy on our Swalot if we can. Our opponent actually ends up going for a swap out though. We catch a move on our own Swalot and our own Swalot after the swap out. That's a bit of a tongue twister, and Night Slash comes through. A boost. That's not what we want to see. Boost is also going to be one of the worst things we could see here because at this point, it's going to make it so maybe they can go for a full Karate Chop down against our Swalot. We can go for one Sludge. The second one is going to follow very soon after, but our opponent might just start shielding their Pangoro now that it is boosted. In comes a Sludge, our opponent. Do they shield? Do they let it go? Sludge does end up drawing a shield here, but now a full Karate Chop might happen to our Swalot. I could shield this move up, but I feel like our Shadow Sableye is going to be the play to win this game. Night Slash does knock us out. a second boost, a double boosted Pangoro. This is exactly what we did not want to see here. This is going to be such a hard game to win. At this point, I have to try to make a catch. We don't get the catch off, but we do get a couple side waves, which might put them into range where one Shadow Claw can knock them out. They have so much energy I need right now for this to be enough to knock them out. Night Slash does end up getting shielded there. Our opponent goes down to that Shadow Claw. We have so much energy on our Shadow Sableye. In comes that Talonflame. Can we one-shot with Power Gem? If I only had Foul Play and Dazzling Gleam, I don't think I'd win this game, but having Power Gem will easily get a one-shot against them. They no-shield, hoping that I don't have it, but because I do, now I can Shadow Claw down that Swalot and take the win just barely in that matchup. All right, next game, a Lapras, this time in the lead. We saw this matchup here on the other side just a second ago. It's not a great lead matchup for me, and in comes a Shadow Drapion as a counter swap to my Shadow Sableye. This matchup, once again, not the best matchup to be in, but because Shadow Drapion is a little bit inefficient with its fast food pressure against a Ghost-type Pokemon, it's not quite able to get a one-shot against us as well as farm down without letting us get to a lot of charge moves. Power Gem could potentially draw a shield from them here, so I'm going to go for a Foul Play bait instead, and our opponent very wisely throws a charge move right before my next potential Power Gem would be reached. In comes the Aqua Tail. It will draw a shield, but at this point, I think I can reach back-to-back Foul Play, which will also get either their final shield or potentially knock them out and flip switch advantage. Foul Play does end up getting a shield here. We go for another one. Our opponent, unfortunately for us, does not go for a CMP, which means they get a full farm down against us, and now our Sableye will go down. With that said, our Swalot is able to neutralize this Pokemon, hopefully quite well, go for a full Mudshot down against them, and then Lapras in the backline might have some play. With that said, we know there's an opposing Lapras that was in the lead, which means that I do want to chip them down a little bit if I can. I have no idea what moveset they're running, but if they are on Skull Bash, then I do need some chip damage against them before I end up coming in with my own Water and Ice-type Pokemon. In comes the first Sludge. This will do a decent chunk of damage. If I can land a second Sludge as well, then we should put them into range where either Sidewaves or even just Sidewave plus Sparkling Aria will be enough to knock them out. In comes the next Sludge, and at this point, I just have to bank on whatever the final Pokemon being is something that our Lapras could be able to win against. Sludge does quite a bit of damage to them here, and we also get a catch, which is very nice to see. But what is their final Pokemon? We have a shield advantage Lapras. Hopefully we can beat it. That is potentially one of the worst things that we could see, though, that this Pokemon at this point, I don't even think gets two-shot by Sparkling Area if I don't get our attack dropped, but it also has access to Rock Tomb. So after this move, yeah, not even close to two-shotting here, and after this debuff, definitely not going to be enough. They're going to be able to outpace us before I can get to a third Sparkling Aria, so at this point, this game is over. Fortress in the back, just a little bit too much to handle. All right, next game, going to see an Annihilape in the lead. Honestly, not the best lead, not the worst lead out there. Pretty neutral matchup. Mudshot is neutral against them. Counters are resisted against us, but because counter is just a bit more of an offensive charge, or fast move rather, than Mudshot, it's able to do a bit more fast pressure than you might expect. I'm going to actually go in with our Shadow Sableye here, make them clear their boost at this point. They took quite a few Shadow Claws, which is very nice to see, and they come in with a Serperior to counter swap to our Shadow Sableye. It seems like Sableye is a little bit tricky for their team right now. Foul Play is coming through. Our opponent does let it go, so at this point, we should win the two-shield matchup and just farm them all the way down. In comes a charge attack here from Serperior. What is it going to be? Luckily, no Leaf Tornado. It is a Frenzy Plant, and at this point, we can go for another Foul Play, try to get a shield here, and go for a CMP, but they do overfarm once again, and because our Sableye is one away from a move, likely going to see a charge attack from this Serperior in just a second. They do throw instantly here, which is a very smart play, but I think I can still do a shield and a full farm down against the Serperior, which means we'll have a lot of energy against the backline with our Shadow Sableye. If the Annihilape comes back in, I'm going to instantly throw a Foul Play here. What are they going to do? In comes the Annihilape, so Foul Play will be thrown. Our opponent at this point is not quite yet at a charge move. Can I get a farm down if they do opt to let this attack go? In comes the Foul Play. It does go for a full farm down against this Annihilape, and now what is in the back? It is actually a Novan Stunfisk, so a Pokemon that is a little bit tricky for our Swalot and our Lapras, saying they have super effective ground type damage for our Swalot, super effective electric type damage for our Lapras as well, but we have an Ice Beam already ready to go here on our Swalot. It is super effective. It gets a shield actually, and even our Mudshots are super effective against them. The funny thing here is also, I don't think a Mud Bomb one-shots us from this range, so they're going to need to go for 2 charge moves to knock out our Swalot, and super effective Ice Beam is going to put them way too low at this point. In comes the Mud Bomb. How much damage will this do? It is super effective, but it's not the strongest attack, and Swalot is such a bulky monster here. Our opponent at that point realizes not much they can do. Next game here, we're going to see a Shadow Drapion in the lead up against our Shadow Swalot. Once again, a pretty decent lead matchup, although not unplayable for the Shadow Drapion, especially as we've seen if they end up getting defense drops against us. In comes a Crunch, almost certainly. It's going to do a lot of damage to us, but it does not quite two-shot, and unfortunately, a lack of patience by me makes it so I end up throwing this Ice Beam into a Golisopod. I saw it coming, like, I saw the switch happen. I just was, like, tapping the Ice Beam right away, so I ended up throwing the Ice Beam when I really shouldn't have. With that said, I can go for a catch of my own here, catching an Aqua Aqua Jet on our Lapras, but I really wish I didn't just do that. That's a lot of energy down the drain, and that Drapion in the backline is going to be a very tricky Pokemon to deal with. In comes a charge move here from this Golisopod, likely going to be an X Scissor now. They know it is their neutral charge attack to throw, rather. In comes a Ice Beam actually from us. Ice Beam does do a little bit more raw damage than Sparkling Aria. I want to guarantee that it does knock out from this range, which it is just barely able to do. In comes a Shadow Drapion once again, and we can go for Sparkling Aria to either draw a shield or do a massive amount of damage to this Pokemon. At this point, though, they have so much energy on this Drapion, it is a little bit scary. Can they get a full farm down against us? Lapras, though, just a little bit too bulky, but they do end up throwing right at the last second here. If I was kind of hoping that I had a bit more than 1 HP here, I could go for a shield and get that move off, but I think that might have just been a shield KO if I shielded that attack up, so I do let it go, and I bring back in our Swalot. A 1-turn lag, love to see it, ends up happening here, which means now our Swalot is going to try its best to get a Sludge off against whatever I can. In comes a Lapras in the backline, and at this point, a shield advantage Sableye should be able to close out this game, especially after landing that charge move with our Swalot against this Lapras. I know they have a bit of energy on their Shadow Drapion, but they are down shields. I don't get one-shot by any charge move remaining. There is no fast move pressure either, so I'm going to no-shield the Sparkling Aria, go for an overfarm here, and try our best at this point to either knock out the Lapras or be in a range where I can go for 2 foul plays against that Drapion in the backline and 1 foul play against this Lapras. In comes a foul play here up against this Lapras. This should get a knockout or a shield at this point. I would expect them to let this go and try to reach 2 Aqua Tails with their Shadow Drapion. That is exactly what ends up happening. 3 more Shadow Claws is all it needs, so I can go for a back-to-back foul play up against this Pokemon. It might not be enough to one-shot here, but it also is going to put them into fast move farm down range if they do let it go. Our opponent did not have the back-to-back charge moves, and we are able to win that game. Next matchup, a terrible lead, probably one of the worst leads we could see here with this team. Shadow Sableye is going to come in and try its very best to deal with the Shadow Kanto Marowak, but we have to keep in mind our Swalot is in such a bad spot if they ever save this thing, so I do need to knock this out as quickly as possible. Shadow Kanto Marowak is well known, though, for doing Mud Slap damage and just 2-shielding through Pokemon. Is Shadow Sableye one of those Pokemon that cannot win the 2-shield matchup? Let us just wait and see. In comes another foul play here. Our opponent at this point is just committing to fast move pressure. Can I reach another foul play before they're able to Mud Slap down? It's going to come down to the wire. Sableye should be able to reach it if we get the DRE here, but no DRE ends up happening for us, meaning that we get full Mudslap down. If we could have reached that move, which the game supposedly is intended to do, we would be in a much better spot here, but because now we have to take moves, I'm going to just sack our Swalot at this point and hope that our Lapras is going to be enough to win this game. I'm going to actually catch a Bone Club here, knowing that this is now not going to be a Rock Slide against our Lapras is at least going to help us out a little bit, but this is such a bad spot to be in, especially because there's a Shadow Sableye in the backline, a Pokemon which is not great for our Lapras to see, it's not great for our Swalot to see, and it's not great for anything on our team. In comes the Sparkling Aria. It does do quite a bit of chip damage to them, but because they are able to resist our Psy Waves, we do no fast move pressure. I have to hope at this point that they are just going for a foul play against us, and maybe at this point I can just hope to see what the third Pokemon is going to be. Let's see what's going to happen. At this point I do have to let this go and go for potentially a Sludge against a Sableye if I want to knock them out. I do know at this point that Sludge should be enough to knock them out here. Mudshot is doing a decent amount of damage to them, and Sludge is a very efficient attack against a pretty squishy Pokemon. Sludge comes through. It does knock out this Shadow Sableye here in the backline. Once again, that Marowak comes back in. Of course, they have another move because Marowak is just so stupid. And now I will throw a Sludge to knock this Pokemon out. What is their final Pokemon going to be? At the very least, we will be able to see it. Sludge does come through. It should knock out this Marowak, and Swalot will have no HP remaining for whatever the final Pokemon is going to be. Okay, well, at least we saw it. It's a Cradily. That was a very rough matchup. All right. Next game, we're going to see a Malamar up against our Swalot, so another kind of tricky lead matchup to deal with here, but we do have to keep in mind Swalot is pretty bulky, right? So despite taking super effective damage from these Psywaves, we have Sludge, which is very efficient, and we should, in the Zero Shield matchup, actually get 2 Sludges off before getting completely knocked out here by Psywave damage plus Foul Play. In comes another Charge Attack. I know at this point this Foul Play won't one-shot us here. In fact, if they do throw a second Foul Play, we should be able to survive it just barely and reach the Sludge. They actually end up overfarming just a little bit here, so I do reach the Sludge. What are they going to do? In comes the Sludge, and they do let that move go. I'm going to swap into Sableye, try to go for a full farm down against them, but they do opt to throw a Charge move right before I get the full Shadow Claw down. Foul Play does about half of our HP there. We end up baiting out a Cradily, which our Lapras is very happy to see, and unfortunately for me, I throw after 5 Shadow Claws, so not the best timing out there. I should have thrown after 4 Shadow Claws if I wanted to throw on good timing against this Cradily, but now since they're overfarming themselves here, I'm going to throw on what might consider to be worse timing, but since they go for a CMP here, I am able to get a non-debuff Foul Play off against this Cradily, and potentially draw a shield once again. We got 2 shields from this Cradily, which is kind of crazy to say. They go for a Rock Tomb Undercharge, and at this point, maybe a bit of a misplay, I swap into our Lapras, course here, because I know I have Ice Beam and I don't want to give this thing a huge energy lead. In comes a Rock Tomb against our Lapras, but at this point, we're able to clear our debuff later on if we need to. We're going to go for an Ice Beam against him if I can, but our opponent tries to catch the move here on their Corviknight. This should be a very winnable game at this point, though. I have energy on Lapras. They are not at Rock Tomb yet on that Cradily. In fact, they're 2 Bullet Seeds away, so as long as I have very good energy management and I can clear our debuff at some point here with our Lapras, we should be able to win this matchup. Sparkling Aria, after that debuff, does not quite 3-shot here. Psywave is trying to add up over time, but Corviknight is at least kind of bulky, right? It's the one thing it has going for it. We shield the Iron Head. We end up going for a clear of our debuff there. Maybe I should try to go for a catch, but it still doesn't matter. We don't give them enough energy where it's really going to matter here. And because we have cleared that debuff, the next Sparkling Aria will knock them out. And as long as I don't let a catch happen in this game, we should be able to win this one just by going for a Water-type move here up against this Corviknight and an Ice-type charge move against that Cradily when it comes back in. Sparkling Aria does get thrown. Our opponent does not make a catch, and in comes the Cradily. And they try to make a catch. We see it coming a mile away. They are still 1 Bullet Seed away, so 2 more Psywaves plus an Ice Beam is enough to knock out this Cradily. Lapras able to sweep this endgame here. GG's to our opponents. That was a very tricky matchup there, and Lapras just barely able to come through there. Next game, I'm going to see a Lapras, this time in the lead, up against our Swalot. Not a great lead matchup. We did see one Psywave user that we had play against in that last game, but because Lapras is so much bulkier here, I'm just going to swap out and see what we can do later on. In comes an instant charge move from our opponent, likely going to be a Sparkling Aria. I can shield this up and just overfarm at this point, saying they are staying in this matchup. Our opponent comes in with a Registeel, so the Lapras Registeel core, a team that honestly does not seem like a real one, saying fighting-type Pokemon do exist. I've seen Pangoros today. I've seen a lot of fighters, Annihilape even. I don't know what they're planning, but at this point, I can go for these charge move spams up against this Registeel, knowing that this is actually my best answer to this Steel-type Pokemon. In comes a charge move, likely going to be a Zap Cannon from our opponent right now, so I do have to go for a shield unless I wanted to get one shot, and because I have energy left over and I don't get debuffed, I think our foul plays should be able to start adding up over time, maybe even letting us get a nice Shadow Claw down against this very bulky Steel-type Pokemon. One more Shadow Claw is all we need to knock out this Registeel, and what is going to come in to drain our energy. If Lapras comes back in, I have Power Gems ready to go. If it's whatever their final Pokemon is, we can make the decision when we see it. It is the Lapras, so at this point, in comes the Power Gem. This is one of the main matchups that having this Rock-type charge move is very helpful for. Power Gem being thrown, our opponent lets it go. We can Shadow Claw them all the way down, but our opponent brings in their own Shadow Sableye before we can quite do that. I know at this point, though, despite not having a great hard answer to this Pokemon, once we chip it down just a little bit here and get their final shield, we should be able to win this game just with a lot of fast and charge move pressure. We have an Ice Beam, which will be reached, and although it is non-stab, Shadow Sableye is not a bulky Pokemon. It should do about half of their remaining HP, maybe just a little bit more, and then Mudshot, Sideways, Shadow Claws. That's all we'll need to finish off this endgame. Ice Beam being thrown, it does put them deep into the red, and now we're going to go for a Mudshots. They are overfarming so much energy, but because we still have access to our Shadow Sableye, we can get either all of their energy drained against our Ghost and Dark-type Pokemon, or potentially just Shadow Claw them down if they don't throw their energy instantly, which is what ends up happening. In the end, that Lapras had nowhere to go in the backline, and we did not even need our Lapras in that game. All right, next matchup here, the Swampert in the lead. Not exactly the lead matchup you want as the Poison-type Pokemon, but we can come in with our Lapras as a safe swap and try our best to chip this down with Sidewaves and with Sparkling Aria. In comes a charge move, likely going to be a Sludge against us. It does do a decent amount of chip damage, but not enough to put us into range where a Shadow Drapion's Crunch will knock us out, at least not quite yet. In comes the charge move, Crunch will do a decent amount of our HP, but we are almost at back-to-back Sparkling Aria, which I believe at this point will either draw a shield or get a switch advantage. In comes the Sparkling Aria. What will our opponent do? The first move does end up getting a shield, the second one will be thrown. Does our opponent want a double shield, or are they fine taking this charge move? Sparkling Aria being thrown, it will end up landing against this Drapion, and now I'm going to swap back into our Swalot, which you might think is an odd play, but we do have to keep in mind Swalot is able to do a decent amount of damage to that Shadow Swampert. We did chip it down as well with our Sideways, and we have Ice Beam and an energy lead here to throw against this Pokemon. In comes the charge move. What are they going to do? They're already down a shield, so almost certainly going to see a no shield here from this Swampert, and because they're overfarming so much energy, they might get to a second charge move here in just a second. I think I will let this go and try to get an energy lead with our Shadow Sableye. Hydro does get thrown against us. I can come with our Shadow Sableye, potentially catch a charge move as well with our Lapras if we need to. In comes the move. Yeah, we don't quite get the farm down, so we go for a catch on the Hydro Cannon, which is able to happen. This will knock out our Lapras, but now we have shield advantage, we have energy advantage, and more importantly, we have Sableye advantage, which is the most important advantage to have. This Pokemon is just such a menace in this meta, and we are met by a Shadow, or a non-Shadow actually, Jump Bluff. This Pokemon might have access to Aerial Ace, and if they do, this endgame could get a little bit tricky knowing how spammy that move is, and the super effective Fairy Winds are adding up as well. They do properly shield up the Power Gem as well. Very good play by them, but we're able to get a lot of Shadow Claw damage. We are at another Power Gem here in just a second, and they throw Energy Ball. That likely means Aerial Ace and Energy Ball is not their moveset, right? They're probably on Acrobatics Energy Ball. No bait move by them means we can easily now just go for a full farm down against them. We won't even need to throw a Foul Play against this Pokemon. And even though I think I can Shadow Claw down both this Jumpluff and that Drapion, once I see Drapion come in, I might as well go for the Foul Play, or our opponent might just top left and we can take the win in that match. GG's there to our opponent. Next matchup, we're going to see a Shadow Kanto Marowak, one of the worst lead matchups we could possibly see, but our Shadow Sableye should be able to, at the very least, start tripping him down with Shadow Claws, maybe drawing shields as well here with our foul plays, and as long as our opponent doesn't have another hard answer to Swalot in the backline, maybe we'll have some play this game. We'll have to see what they end up doing. And comes a Bone Club. It's going to do quite a bit of damage, so I will have to shield this up, and what are they going to do now? They actually swap out into the Dugong. They want to keep their Marowak alive, likely for my Swalot, but because now the Switch Clock's are desynced, and because Power Gem is just such an efficient move, I think I can throw this attack and potentially either draw a shield or do a critical amount of damage to this Ice-type Pokemon. And comes a charge move. They can't farm us down because I was very close to a foul play. I'm going to let this go. I don't feel like I can go for a shield advantage or a down shields play, saying those rock slides against that Marowak would do a lot of damage to our Lapras, and I actually opt to come in here with our Swalot. I know we won't get a full Mudshot down before they get a charge move, but I can take a Drill Run. I can go for Ice Beam as well against that Marowak if they go back into that Pokemon, but they actually bring in their Shadow Drifblim here, a Pokemon which by no means wants to take an Ice Beam. They have no idea what my final Pokemon is, so they actually opt to shield that attack up. I know there's a Marowak in the back line. There is no reason for me to swap out, and because they throw energy instantly, I know I can outpace them to a Shadow Ball with an Ice Beam on our Lapras as long as we don't one-turn lag. Well, guess what happens? We one-turn lag here, which means now it's going to be a CMP on the Ice Beam. I know at this point this is such a bad spot to be in. If I didn't one-turn lag there, I wouldn't have to shield this move up, and this is likely going to be a bait, but I have to respect that it could be an Ice Beam. Now that we've gone down shields here, I have to hope that being debuffed and having no shields, our Lapras is still going to be just enough to knock out this Marowak. I know Ice Beam is a very strong attack. I know Marowak is pretty squishy as well, but is this enough damage here? The game is trying to make me lose. Ice Beam comes through though. It gets the one-shot against the Marowak, and we Psywave down the inferior water and ice-type Pokemon. Lapras able to get us the endgame sweep there and win us the match. Also getting us a 4-1 set here to end off the day, getting us to 28-11. I think we went like 12-8 on the day. A pretty efficient day, but we only climbed, I think, like 15 points because of how bad the elo gains here are when you're trying to climb the leaderboard. So, I mean, this team worked out pretty well. We didn't climb too much with it, but we went very positive on the day. I think Swalot is fantastic. Lapras and Shadow Sableye as well, just putting in so much work. I definitely recommend this team if you want to try to climb in the Go Battle League and you want to use some of the newest Pokemon in the meta. Anyway, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed the battles and you want to see more content like this in the future, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.